Questionable, but I like the look.
You're being recorded right now, you know. All right. I was just asking, where's Kevin? All right, I promised you guys that we're on a tight time frame tonight. It's 6 o'clock exactly. I was told to get off the stage and let her talk, which I'm going to do. She's climbed Kilimanjaro. She's piloted a helicopter. She's been part of a professional ballet company. She was the first head of branding and strategy for Sony. She worked for Burger King, Land Rover, others. This is what happens when I go off script.
That's totally fine.
I've seen her talk before. She's awesome. She's badass. She's going to talk about branding. Welcome, Denise Lee Yohn, tonight.
This is a tricky time for you all because next week is like crunch time, so I appreciate you being here. Before I jump into my talk, I kind of wanted just to get to know who I'm talking to a little bit. So I want to ask about your background a little bit in terms of how many of you have held a job that had to do with like a professional career, so not like working at a restaurant or working in a retail store or driving for Uber, but like actually had some sort of like professional job prior to being here. Anybody? Okay. What can you just kind of shout out the kinds of jobs that you've had, just so I understand? Architecture. Okay. Architecture firm. Interior architecture. I'm sorry. Interior architecture. Okay. All right. Okay, all right, so generally, so working for an architecture firm or company, okay, all right. Are any of you doing that now in addition to going to class? Okay, yeah, quite a few of you are, okay. You all have like side hustles. Okay, so that helps me out a lot. So what I'm going to be doing is talking about brand building. And I understand that Carl told you that I was going to tell you how to make a lot of money, which in a roundabout way I will, because I'm not going to be talking about design or branding in a way that you might have been hearing about it in the past. What I'll be doing is introducing a different way of thinking about your brand, which I do believe is more valuable, not only for companies, but as individuals. When you're working in this way, you actually contribute more value to the companies that you work for or the companies that you have yourself. So I will somehow deliver on that promise in some roundabout way. But as I said, I'm not going to be talking about branding, because if you think about the term branding, it's kind of problematic, actually. You know, it came about at a time when people had cows and ranches, and they needed to make sure that people wouldn't steal their cows. So they take these, poor innocent cows, and take the sharp, pointy iron and stick it into these burning coals, and then like sear their mark on these cows. And that's what branding means, so that if someone came across the cow, they knew who the cow belonged to. But it's insane to think that branding works as a business concept today. So I'm not going to be talking about searing your mark on something like with a logo to show that you actually own something, or that the company you work for owns a product or owns a service or does a particular thing, but rather I'm going to be talking about brand building, about developing a valuable asset for the companies that you work for or that you might build yourself, okay? So I'm also not going to be talking about advertising per se, because advertising is quite notorious at being unreliable at building a great brand. The Gap has had some of the best advertising in the world, I think, in recent times. You probably are too young to remember, but the Gap had this really great ad with all this like dancing and really hip music. They've had celebrities, they've had famous photographers do their ads for them, and yet the Gap, in terms of a business, has really struggled to make a profit and to sustain sales growth. In fact, I read that in 1 year, the Gap spent $260 million, I think it was either $260 or $280 million on advertising. Think about spending that amount of money on ads And then their comp store sales, which is how you measure success in the retail industry, were down 7%. They actually lost sales of 7%. So for the Gap, just because you've got great advertising doesn't mean that you've got great sales, and that tends to be the case for most businesses out there. So I'm not going to talk about advertising. I'm also not going to talk about gimmicky marketing programs that are out there, like frequent flyer programs. Do any of you belong to one of these kind of frequent flyer? Okay, quite a few of you. Yeah, I mean, I belong to a lot of them. I would venture to say that none of you loves your airline because of this marketing loyalty program they have, right? I fly on American a lot, but I don't love American. I don't feel any emotional connection to that brand. I frankly don't even really recommend American. I mean, the only reason why I fly on American is because I've flown so much that I've accumulated so many miles that I can actually get on the plane earlier, which means that I have room in the overhead for my luggage, and I'm able to kind of put the tray table down and put my computer on and get some work done without the guy in front of me like leaning back as if he wants a shave, right? So that's why I fly on American, but that's not brand loyalty, right? And companies that rely on gimmicky marketing programs like that aren't great brands. You don't even want to assume that if you have a great product, that you will have a great brand. And I always point to this example. How many of you own an iPad? Okay, yeah, okay, quite a few of you. Does anyone own a Motorola Zoom? No? Okay. Well, the experts say that the Zoom is a superior product in terms of its function and its features, but I think we'd all agree which brand we would rather have. So if great brands aren't built by fancy logos, creative advertising, creative marketing programs, how are you supposed to build this kind of rock star brand, the kind of brand that people will line up for hours, days to buy something from you, or people will tattoo your logo on their bodies? How do you build that kind of brand? Well, a lot of times when people look at brands like Nike or Starbucks or Apple, they'll say, oh, well, they got to be so great because it was the right market conditions, or good timing, or just plain luck. And so they kind of say, okay, well, we just are going to hope that we are just as lucky. But I don't know if you heard this phrase, but hope is not a strategy. And you don't want to throw your brand building efforts up against the wall like spaghetti and kind of see which ones work. You really need to know what works. Most companies that you will work for, or if you end up owning your own business, you are not going to have the resources to be able to waste like that. But that's why I'm here, because I've actually cracked the code on how to build a great brand. From working on great brands like these and speaking to business leaders around the world for organizations, I've really learned what it takes to build a great brand, and I'm going to lay out that complete blueprint for you today. Okay? So I need to first explain that the biggest difference between what great brands do and what everyone else does actually has very little to do with marketing, has very little to do with customer service. Really, the biggest distinction about a great brand is how the people in the organization think about and use their brand. You see, they don't think about their brand as something that's off to the side from their business. They know that that view is very short-sighted. They know that your brand is not something that's so incidental to the way that you run your business that you can kind of change your brand whenever you feel like it. Your brand is not an image or like a pair of clothes that you can change whenever. If you want to change the way your brand is perceived, you actually need to change your business as well. The two need to be one and the same. And that's because your brand is what you do and how you do it. Now, I know that that's not like the standard business school definition of a brand. The standard kind of more academic definition of a brand goes like this. Your brand is the bundle of values and attributes that define the value that you create for customers and the way that you do business. But if you think about what I just said, it's basically they're saying your brand is what you do and how you do it. And if you think about it and you use your brand in this way, it has so much power because everyone who works on your brand understands how to develop it, how to grow it, how to nurture it, what to spend your money on and what not to, how to express your brand. And so you create that power in the marketplace for your brand. So with that understanding of brand, I want to share with you the 7 brand building principles, these actions that great brands take to build their brand with that understanding that their brand is what they do and how they do it. And actually there's an 8th action, which is the most important action, but you can't get to the 8th one until you've done all 7. So I will just kind of go through all 7. And I'll go through them fairly quickly, so don't worry about this. Hopefully won't be a really long lecture, and there'll be definitely time for questions at the end. But let me just jump right into the first brand building action, which is that great brands start inside. I mean, great brands start building a great brand by developing a brand-led culture within their organization. So we were kind of chatting earlier, and someone asked me, well, what do you do when you come to an organization that doesn't know how to represent itself? And I say, usually what I do, the first thing is I'm pretty sure that's because if you don't know how to represent yourself as a business, it's probably because you don't have the internal alignment and clarity that will then be able to drive your message on the outside. And so that leads to this point about you need to start your brand building inside. Because most people, when they go to build their brand, they will think about their communications. What are we going to say about ourselves? What is our website going to look like? Or our app, what is our app going to look like? Maybe we need to come up with a tagline, or we need to come up with a new tagline or a new website. And I think that's people rely on communications or turn to communications first because when they want to signal a change, it's a lot easier to change what you say about yourself than to actually change yourself. And so most people will turn to communications first, but what I'm saying is that you need to have your culture first. You need to ensure that you have a clear and focused and differentiated purpose and core values to drive everything that you do. Bless you. And then you have something worth communicating, and then you'll have that clarity to be able to communicate it convincingly outside. And you see, I learned this lesson when I was at Sony. So this was back in the late 1990s, and up until that point, Sony had enjoyed clear brand leadership. We were the brand that you bought if you wanted a consumer electronics. So people paid a hefty premium for our products. A lot of people bought them. They just thought they were the best quality, best design, best technology. And so I think we kind of took that brand leadership for granted. And a combination of arrogance and frankly some laziness led us to be completely vulnerable when Apple introduced the iTunes and the iPod, and lower end competitors started ripping off our technology in just a matter of months. So because of this, Sony no longer had a technological advantage, and because of that, we no longer had a brand advantage. So people started trying to propose options for how we could reclaim our brand leadership. And some people said, well, let's just wait to see if our next new product will be a hit. We were doing a lot of digital cameras back then, and people said, let's just hope that R&D gets it right next time. Most of us didn't want to hope. Some people said, well, let's just run some big splashy campaign on TV. Let's just get our name out there and people will respond. But because we could no longer say that our technology was the best, we didn't feel like we really had a message that would resonate with people. So we actually had to kind of challenge our ingrained way of thinking about brand leadership. And we realized that we needed to become creative in everything we did as our products were. and be as innovative in our go-to-market strategy as our advertising was. So everyone in our organization needed to adopt this brand building mindset and kind of consider themselves to be brand builders, even if they weren't in marketing or in design. But everyone needed to understand what the Sony brand was all about. So we started culture building. We started cultivating a brand-led culture inside with the people of our organization. We crafted a newly inspired brand vision, and then we engaged a multidimensional engagement program for our employees to help everyone understand what the Sony brand stood for and how they were to interpret and reinforce it in everything that they did. And so we had a contest at our national sales meeting where we engaged people in a competition about their knowledge of the Sony brand. We had an online forum where people could go online and share insights about the brand. And then we had this internal website that was chock full of all these tools for people in the organization to use to interpret the Sony brand regardless of what role they played. And it was called Being Sony because we wanted everyone in the organization to feel like, yes, I am Sony in whatever role that I play. And it was only after we did all of this that we had a workforce that was engaged, or I should say re-engaged and realigned and ready to compete and win on all fronts. So that's what I mean by starting inside. You need to ensure that you have this clear and focused and differentiated purpose and values to drive, align, and guide everything that you do. And then you will build a great brand. So again, great brands start inside. Now, another thing we were kind of chatting about earlier before everyone came in is, I understand that a lot of you are designers, or you kind of think in this design framework. And I was saying that, I don't have a creative bone in my body, but they assured me that really design is about creative problem solving. And so I think that when you think about how design relates to brand building, you need to think about how do you solve the problem that people within an organization don't understand what the brand stands for, or there's not alignment among everyone in the organization. The operations guy might be thinking one thing, but then the marketing person is thinking something else. And so getting back to the point about how you make money as a designer is to think beyond the design of a particular product or a particular project that you're working on, and to think about the organization as a whole, and how do you design a brand-led culture within the organization. If you think above and beyond your specific function, that's when you really create value for an organization. So that's why I'm talking about building a brand from the inside out. And that's the first, I should say that a strong brand-led culture is the foundation and the fuel for your power of the brand outside your organization. If you don't have that internal alignment engagement, everything that you do is going to be like everything you do on the outside is going to be like putting lipstick on a pig. So you need to have that internal alignment engagement. So that's the first action, first brand building principle. The second brand building principle that all great brands take is that they avoid selling products. And I know that sounds maybe a little counterintuitive, but we humans are emotional beings. And we make product and brand decisions based on how a brand makes us feel and the identities that brands enable us to experience and express. For example, how many of you would consider yourselves to be like an Apple brand fan? Yeah? Okay, there are quite a few of you. So I'm actually not an Apple user. I just Android, PC, blah, blah, whatever. My husband is a huge Apple fan. He loves the Apple brand. Everything that he owns is Apple. And he doesn't like when I tell people this. But I think that when he buys an Apple product, he doesn't think he's just buying a cool gadget. I think he thinks that he's buying coolness for himself, right? Now, I won't ask you if you can relate to that. Yeah, right, yeah. One time he came to my talk, and I realized as I got to this point that I was going to say this, and it was too late for me to kind of change. So we had a nice conversation later. I love the Nike brand. I've loved it since I was 16 years old. And that's because Nike inspires me to feel like an athlete, like me to feel like an athlete. You know, I always buy Nike running shoes, even though I know that or I've heard that its competitors' products are just as good, just as innovative, perform just as well. But Nike resonates with me. I feel like they understand me, they get me. And so I remain loyal to that brand. And Nike, you know, has that power over me and millions of other people because it doesn't tout its technology or promote its feature or push its products without linking those to values like status and aspiration and self-expression. And so you could say that Nike really avoids selling their product. They don't push their products on them. They kind of seduce people to their brand, kind of more with an emotional appeal. And emotion is powerful not just in sexy categories like technology or sporting goods. Salesforce has become like the largest technology software platform out there, knocking out competitors like Microsoft and Oracle, in part because they relate to their customers in a very simple, human, fun way. And I always use this example. This is the Pinterest page from Acme Brick Company. They actually sell bricks, okay? So if Acme can engage their customers in something that is so emotional and inspiring with a product that is as generic and boring as bricks, I think you can understand that emotion works in every category. Again, we humans are emotional beings. So if you want to resonate with the people you're designing for emotionally, you need to ask yourself, what business am I really in? You know, I might be selling cars or designing cars, but am I really in the business of helping people kind of express a new identity or experience a new identity? I may be designing a new home, but am I really helping someone create a nest for my family to come and be cared for? You might be selling cosmetics or clothing, but are you really in the business of helping people feel more confident? You might be selling software, or or some technology product, but are you really in the business of helping people become more productive or becoming their company's hero? You always want to go to that connection, that emotional connection that you can create with folks, and then keep that connection in mind in everything that you do so that you're able to make that connection with your customers. So that's the second action: great brands avoid selling products. Here's another principle that might sound a little counterintuitive: great brands ignore trends. And I think, you know, all of us have been trained, well, we need to pay attention to trends. We need to follow the trends because that's the only way that we can make sure that we're going to be relevant and compelling to our customers as people evolve. But what I've discovered is that great brands have found that when they follow a trend, they end up following everyone else. And usually they get so in that track of following that they get blinded to totally break through brand new ideas that they could actually own for themselves. So that's why great brands ignore trends and sometimes even challenge them. An example here I'll talk about is REI. You know, at a time when all of the retailers were trying to get a leg up on the holiday season by opening their doors earlier and earlier. You know, some retailers were starting to open on Thanksgiving and try to run all these sales earlier. There was kind of this trend towards pushing sales. But REI decided that they were actually going to close their doors and stay closed on Black Friday, which is the retail industry's key day of sales. And they did this because they were really focused on their purpose. Again, going back to, great brands start inside. The purpose of REI is to bring the excitement and adventure of the outdoors to everyone. And so they thought, well, if our employees are working inside, they're not fulfilling our purpose. So we need to give our employees the day off. And so then let's just close our doors and give our customers, or encourage our customers to go outside as well. And you know, when they first announced that they were going to close their doors on Black Friday, people were like, are you crazy? Analysts gave them a lot of heat, but they said, you know, this is how we are going to live out our values and our purpose. And now, and it was so successful that now hundreds, I think 500, over 500 companies and organizations also participate in the Opt Outside program. And REI itself has seen an increase in sales, increase in membership applications, and actually increase in employee applications because of their decision to challenge that retail industry trend. Ignoring trends also sometimes means ignoring your competitors. REI, you know, their purpose is to make life better for the everyday man. And so one of the ways they do that is through their low prices, right? How many people own some sort of IKEA product? Yeah, okay, so you know it's like, it's decent quality for a really great price. In order to stay true to that purpose, they ignore what their competitors are doing. So when they are going to develop a new product, they don't look at what their competitors are doing, and maybe they don't even look for competitive white space and say, you know, where should we be that no one else is? They actually say, okay, we want to offer this kind of product to our customers. How much should we expect them to pay? And then they come up with a price point, and then their designers actually have to do the hard work of developing a product that actually meets those specifications. And because of that, that's why IKEA has come up with so many innovative ways of making furniture and household goods, because they are thinking about what the customer needs, not what their competitors are doing. So ignoring trends doesn't mean that you just kind of put on blinders and you never change and you never evolve. What it means is that you need to find ways to grow and to develop that no one else can. And so that usually means going back to your purpose and your values and identifying what are new ways that we can express that. You can also look outside your category. So instead of focusing on your competitors, look at what people are doing in industries and categories that are way far out from what you are doing, and see how their lives are changing, how their decisions are changing, and what the implication might be for your industry and the thing that you're designing specifically. Action number 4, great brands don't chase customers. Great brands know better than to squander their precious brand equity by chasing after like elusive audiences. And not chasing customers is why in the energy drink category, Red Bull is a far more profitable brand than Monster Energy. And you could probably argue that profitability is probably one of the biggest or strongest indicators of brand strength. Because if you've got two products that seem quite similar, but you can actually charge a lot more for yours, then you probably have a stronger brand. And this is really, you know, whenever I talk about energy drinks, I have to make this caveat because people are like, what do energy drinks have to do with my business? What do energy drinks have to do with designing a home or designing a building, designing a built environment? The truth is that you may think that what you're building is very different from what other people are. But from most people's perspective, the people who are buying your products and services, they kind of all seem the same. I mean, it's true with energy drinks. I'm sure Red Bull and Monster both think that they've got unique products, but we all think that they all taste the same. They taste gross. The only reason why we drink them is because we need a jolt of energy. And because Red Bull can charge more, even though their product is the same, they enjoy this higher profit margin. And Red Bull enjoys that higher profit margin because they've carved out this kind of super premium, exclusive brand position. They don't go after the kind of the mass market with this low price strategy that Monster Energy has. Red Bull actually has carved out a unique position and a unique personality. The CEO of Red Bull, Dietrich Mateschitz, his founder and CEO, says that, you know, it was just as important to him that high school teachers hated his product as it was for their students to love it. So he wasn't worried about alienating a ton of people with all of the kind of the ads that they run and kind of the stunts that they pull. He's truly trying to reach a certain kind of person and invite that person to buy their product. So I would encourage you to do the same thing. When you think about the products that you're developing, the brands that you're building, you need to be willing to stand for something clearly, even though it's going to turn some people off. And you need to adopt an identity that's not going to appeal to all people, but is going to appeal to the right people. Again, one of the things we talked about is as a university, you're not going to attract everyone out there. What is the unique type of person, unique kind of student that you want at LTU? And when you become that, when you have that clarity and that focus, then you can really make that emotional connection with that customer or with that student or with that faculty member. Now, when I talk about, this is my quote, you can't be all things to all people, and Red Bull has learned that you can burn a lot of margin trying to, so don't. So when I talk about this with people, especially if they're like small business people or startup entrepreneurs, they'll say, well, not chasing customers is something that's fine for bigger companies. They can afford to do that. But we're just starting up, we're small, we can't be as discriminating. And I need to remind them, and so I will remind you now, that every company that is a great brand was once the size of a startup, was a startup. And every great leader that we admire started at a company that was small and had limited funds. And the example that I always talk about is Richard Branson. We know him today as this like uber successful founder of Virgin. He's a billionaire 30 times over. But you know what? Back in the 1970s, he was just this geeky guy who ran a bunch of record stores. But he and his partner wanted to run a certain kind of record store. They didn't want to feature all that kind of teeny bop music. They wanted to kind of be more of an elitist hip record store. And in his book, one of his books, Richard talks about having difficulty with that decision because he knew that if they were going to turn away customers by not having the most popular records out there, they were going to lose out on short-term revenue. And Simon, his business partner, had to remind him that, hey, we need to stick to our guns because not only will we then be able to maintain our integrity, but in the long run, we will attract the kinds of customers who will stick with us. And so look where Virgin is today. So regardless of the size of your company, regardless of what stage of business that you're working in, you need to be able to make difficult decisions now so that you can grow and thrive in the future. So one of those difficult decisions is not chasing customers. In fact, sometimes you might have to fire a customer because they aren't aligned with what you are offering. Great brands sweat the small stuff. I mean, in the small stuff in the customer experience. Great brands know that all the big things that you promise in your advertising and marketing are far outweighed by the little things you do for someone in the customer experience. In fact, you could say that customer experience is really the new marketing. It influences brand perceptions just as much, and it impacts brand performance and results just as much. So great brands design their customer experiences down to the last detail, often trying to appeal to all 5 human senses in order to make an impact that is sustainable and emotional and valuable to their customers. When I say customer experience, I want to be clear that I'm saying that you need to think about the sum of all interactions that someone has with your business. Everything that someone tastes, hears, smells, touches, feels, it's all part of that customer experience, and it builds up over every interaction, every transaction that someone has with your business. Customer experience is not just customer service. Customer service is very important, but it's only one aspect of the customer experience. There are all these other touch points that influence someone's experience with you, whether it's the built environment, whether it's all the digital touch points, whether it's the actual products that you're selling. Everything adds up to the customer experience. Now, I know that you all have been sitting for a while, so I'm actually going to have a quiz that's going to require you to stand up in just a moment, okay? And just kind of, sitting is the new cancer or whatever. So why don't you go ahead and stand up. I'm going to ask 3 questions, and whoever's standing at the end can claim to be like a winner. Okay, so go ahead and stand up. And just like I said, there are 3 questions. And if you get the answer wrong, then you have to sit down. Okay? All right. So the first question about customer experience is that you've all probably heard that people will pay more for a product if it comes within a better customer experience. But the question I have is, what % of customers will pay more for a better customer experience? Just think to yourselves, is it 26% of customers will pay more? Is it 56%? Or is it 86%? So how many of you said 26 or think 26%? Okay. How many of you think 56%? Okay, and 86? All right, well, those of you who did not select 86 need to sit down, all right? Practically all people are willing to pay at least something more, right? And nearly half will pay 15% or more. So again, when we're talking about profit margin, you can actually make a lot more money just on customer experience. I was just talking with someone about Delta Airlines. They actually have improved their customer experience enough where they can actually charge a premium. It's not a huge premium, but they actually charge more than their competitors, and their profitability has been, their performance has been great. Okay, next question. So Forrester classified certain companies as customer experience leaders, and then other companies customer experience laggards. And then they compared the compound average revenue growth of these 2 groups of companies, okay, over a 5-year period. And those customer experience laggards, the companies who are not doing well in customer experience, had only a 3% compound average revenue growth in that period. The question is, what percentage did customer experience leaders have? Okay, was it 10%, 15%, or 17%? So how many people say 10%? Okay, 10% is huge. I mean, that's a lot, okay? How many people say 15%? Again, even more. What about 17%? Okay, we've lost a ton of people. Let's go in and sit down. So yeah, stay standing if you got both answers correct. All right. Very good. All right. So customer experience not only improves your profit margin, actually increases your sales and revenue. This last question has to do with the gap in perception between business leaders. So I talked to a lot of business leaders. This survey, this research surveyed business leaders. 80% of them said that they believe that they are delivering a superior customer experience. And the question is, what % of their customers agreed with them? Okay. Did 8% of their customers say, yes, you are delivering a superior customer experience? Did 28%? Or is it 58%? Okay. So how many people said 58%? Okay. What about 28%? Yeah. What about 8%? All right, there's, I think, 3 of you. Congratulations. Okay. Yay! So give yourselves a hand. What I will do, if you do this for me, I didn't have enough room in my suitcase to bring a ton of books, so I will give this copy of my book to this gentleman here, and then the other 2 people who were standing up, make sure you either give me your information or contact me, and I will send you a free book. Okay? All right. Yay. A couple more things that I just want to cover. So there's this gap between what business leaders think and what customers think. And it's not because business leaders are clueless, right? It's just I think a lot of business leaders are working on the wrong things in customer experience. And so you could be trying very hard to create a great customer experience, but if you don't know what your customers really want and need, then it all goes to waste. And in fact, you can actually turn customers off. 2/3 of customers say that a bad experience is the reason why they've taken their business elsewhere. And I'm sure you can relate. I'm sure there are businesses that you will no longer go to because you're like, I have so many other options. Why should I put up with this one? And as you probably also know, people are twice as likely to share about a negative experience they've had than a positive one. So your customer experience can impact your brand reputation and your market share. So that's why you need to sweat the small stuff in your customer experience. And so here are just a few examples. You guys don't have Chick-fil-A here, do you? Oh, you do? I'm sorry? Only airport. Okay, and the airport's probably not a great example. I'm sorry, what did? Somerset. Somerset. Oh, okay, all right. Again, not a great example. Atlanta, if you go to Chick-fil-A in Atlanta, that's a great place to go there because that's where they're based. But any Chick-fil-A normally, if you go into their bathroom, you will see the toilet paper, the corners of the toilet paper turned down. Why? Well, because Chick-fil-A wants to offer this kind of fast food experience that is actually a couple notches above your typical fast food. And so one way they do this is by doing things that at finer establishments you would find. So the next time you go like when you're traveling, go to a Chick-fil-A and check out the toilet paper. And not only will the toilet paper be turned down, but the restrooms will be spotless. Sweating the small stuff doesn't just have to be like in the physical environment. MailChimp is an email newsletter provider. I use it to send newsletters to my clients. And one of the things they do after you send an email campaign, they don't just like have this message that's like submitted or confirmed or email sent. They're like, yay, you need to rock on, because they realize that that moment of sending an email is critical to their success, and they want to make something worth celebrating for their customers. And it's a way for them to differentiate themselves from every other email newsletter provider out there. So you can express yourself and through messaging, through images, through just the way that you communicate with your customers as a way to improve your customer experience. And you can also think about anticipating customers' wants and needs. This is a copy of an email that my husband got before we went traveling a couple years ago. We were taking an international trip. And what usually happens to us on an international trip is that our credit cards get declined. Like you try to go buy something and then you're stuck in this foreign country with no money and you're trying to buy stuff. It's really a big hassle. Well, American Express figured out just kind of from our purchases of airline tickets and hotel reservations and whatever data points they have, hey, looks like you're going on a trip. We've made it easy for you. We've pre-cleared your credit cards. And here are some other tips to make your travels go safely and smoothly. Guess which credit card we used the entire time we were on the trip? Right? There's so much data out there now that you can actually predict what people are going to do. And that's another way of sweating the small stuff in the customer experience. So you want to look at all of the different ways that a customer comes into contact with your business and with your brand. And one way that you can do that is through a brand touchpoint wheel. This is just a template. It's something that I use with my clients to help them identify all the different touch points between them and the outside world, and then all the internal departments and groups that impact those touch points. And so we'll go through and we'll identify the touch points, and then we will prioritize them based on the impact that they make on customers. We'll also look for overlooked or underserved touch points like the toilet paper example and figure out, is there a way that we can do something creative and memorable for our customers? And then we go about improving those touch points. You need to really get a 360-degree view of what your customer is experiencing. This is something that a lot of people always ask me about, and I always kind of get questions about. So if you're interested in learning more about the brand touchpoint wheel, you can go to this URL. There you'll be able to download the wheel template, download a worksheet on how to put it together, and then also other free resources like a free chapter to each of my books and a bunch of other things. So if you want to go there, the URL. The one thing that I do want to point out about this touchpoint wheel is that only a fraction of these touch points are the typical marketing things that people think about when they think about brand touch points. There are so many other ways that people develop perceptions about your business, and so you want to make sure that you are paying attention to all of them and sweating the small stuff in all of them. Okay, two more actions. The next one is great brands never have to give back. Now, please don't misunderstand me. Giving back is good. But great brands seem to be asking themselves, why merely do good when we can actually be great? And so they look for a way to make a positive impact either on the environment or on society or on their communities by the very way that they run their business. And the example here that I'll point to is GE. So GE cares about the environment. But they don't just make a donation to an environmental cause, or they don't tell their employees to go run in the Earth Day 5K, although they may do that. But they actually are redesigning their factories to reduce water and energy consumption. They're retooling their products so that they use less water and energy. And so they're actually changing what they do to make a positive impact. GE also hires veterans. Not because that makes a great PR story and they want to get credit for it, but because veterans are the exact kind of people they want in their company. People who are familiar with technology and globalization, people who are natural leaders. So this is what I mean by running your company to make a positive impact. You know, this phrase giving back has become so commonplace that I think people forget it kind of has a little bit of a negative connotation. You know, it implies that you've taken something that you need to give back. But if you're actually creating a positive social impact in the very way you do business, you don't have to give back. So instead of doing corporate social responsibility, you know, because you have to, you want to do CSR, you want to do CSV, you want to create shared value, value that everyone who's involved in your business can benefit from, whether that's your customers, whether it's your employees, whether it's your investors, whether it's your suppliers, distributors, the communities that you do business in, society, the world at large. You want to be thinking about creating value for everyone. And so that's what I mean by never having to give back. The last action is great brands commit and stay committed to the core of their brand. And I know that this one actually sounds intuitive. People always nod and be like, oh, yeah, we get it. You need to be committed. You need to be focused. But in the 25 plus years I've been in business, I've worked with business leaders who they get off track. And I don't know if it's because they're under pressure to produce short-term results, or whether they want to imitate the successful practices of others, or maybe they just get bored. But it's really easy to drift off of your core. But great brands are crystal clear about their brand aspirations. They lock them in, and then they execute on them relentlessly. And there can perhaps be no better example of this than Amazon. Amazon's mission is to become Earth's most customer-centric company. And everything that Jeff Bezos, the CEO, and his team have done since the beginning of the company has been in service of that mission. When he wrote his first letter to his shareholders back in 1997, he said, the way that you will judge us as a company is whether we achieve that mission and whether we are focused on the long term. In other words, whether we are committed to the core. So, you know, when the Kindle Fire Phone project failed, he was fine with that. When his company lost $39 million or 9 cents a share, he was fine with that. You know, when people criticized him for selling the Kindle device at a loss, he was fine with that because he was saying, we are committed to becoming Earth's most customer-centric company, and we will do whatever it takes to stay committed to that. So when you commit to the core of your brand, you will often do things that are counterintuitive, that cause you to turn down opportunities that your competitors would kill for. But great brands know that they need to say no more than they say yes. It's about deciding what not to do so that you can excel at what you do. So that's what I mean by great brands commit and stay committed to the core of their brand. So those are the 7 brand building actions that all great brands take, regardless of the size of their marketing budget, the size of the company, regardless of the types of industries they're in. This is what I outline in my book, What Great Brands Do. So like I said, you can go to this URL, download the first chapter, download some other free resources from that book. But I do want to deliver on the promise that I said there was this 8th action, and some of you are probably like, okay, you know, we're getting close to the time. When is she going to get to the 8th action? The eighth action that all great brands take is they implement the brand as business management approach, meaning they adopt their brand as the central organizing and operating idea for their company. So brand building is no longer this kind of marketing function off to the side. It's the strategic management responsibility. It's the decision filter through which every key strategy, every key decision is made at the company, from culture to customer experience to communications. So here's what I want you to remember. Every great brand defines its brand as its business. Great brands know that you don't build a great brand through advertising, you build it through action. You don't build it by developing an image, you do it by delivering a customer experience. Your brand can't just be a promise, it must be a promise delivered. And when you implement the brand as business management approach, you experience all sorts of great results. You have higher profit margins because the research shows that people are willing to pay more for products and services from great brands. You have customers who are truly loyal to you, not those who are kind of wishy-washy, loyal-ish. You have lower overhead costs because not only are you having your customers who do the marketing for you, they spread positive word of mouth, but you're also able to attract and retain employees more easily because you attract people who believe in what you're doing. You're also in a better negotiating position with your suppliers and vendors because they want their brand associated with yours. You have a greater valuation financially if you are looking to acquire a company, you're looking to get your startup valued, or you're looking to be acquired. If you have a great brand, the analysts show that you actually have greater financial value. And you will also enjoy goodwill. You know, something will always go wrong for your company. And if you have a great brand, you'll have people who will stand up for you, stick by you, and know that you will make it right. So that's how you build this rock star brand, through the brand as business management approach and through the 7 brand building actions that I just took you through. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, or if you have feedback or observations about brands that you have worked on, I'd love to hear that as well. Yes?
I have a question. So like you were talking a lot about like actual brands, and I think a lot of times as designers, we get told that we ourselves are like pretty much our own brand, and that we should market ourselves as like, let's say I'm like my own brand, right? How would you suggest we apply like these kind of stuff being told that actual brands do like a global, or how do we apply that to our own work to market ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can answer that because I'm an independent. I left the corporate world 14 years ago, and a lot of people say that I'm building my own brand. I apply these same principles to myself. I start inside by making sure that I have a clear purpose and I have clear core values. And I'll just share this with you. Every morning, I meditate on those purpose and values, and I go through my calendar for that day, and I think about how can I fulfill my purpose in this meeting or in this presentation that I'm making or in this project that I'm working on. So, you know, you start inside by making sure that you have your purpose and values clear. And then avoid selling products. You know, I don't do advertising, I don't do marketing. I put my thought leadership out there, and people who that resonates with come and seek me out. I mean, Carl saw me speak at Zing Train, and he sought me out to come and speak to you all because it resonated with him. So and I could go through all of the principles, but these really do apply to you as a person. You need to think about the value that you represent. Again, your brand is what you do and how you do it. And so if you think about what is that value that you're creating by what you do and how you do it, then you as a person, you know, become your own brand. And you know, some people who deal in personal branding will tell you things like you need to dress a certain way or you need to use the right tools. Again, that's like you need to have great advertising, you need to have great marketing. I mean, you need to do those things, but really it's these principles that are going to distinguish you as a valuable contributor or a valuable business person. I think I saw a hand raised over here with another. Yes.
I promise not to ask a question, but I broke it because point 6, you had great brands never have to give back.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned that great brands are about focused
Mm-hmm.
on their values and purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you did say in point 6 that you want to realign the values and purposes with the idea of give back.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that kind of suggest that you're kind of expanding the focus?
Help me understand why you would conclude that.
Because you brought this example of this one company that
Mm-hmm.
had changed its whole, I want to say, factory
Mm-hmm.
to, let's say, a sustainable measure. And
Yes.
was that their true, let's say, value and purpose, like to be sustainable on top of what they actually are going for?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a way of them fulfilling their purpose and values. So GE is this huge manufacturing company. They make engines for jets and things like that. So that is, I mean, in one way you could say that that is the core product that they're selling. But they could choose to do business like just cranking out as many products as they could. But they realized that in order to be sustainable, and I mean sustainable business, like in order to thrive over the long term, they can't operate in ways that are harmful to the environment. So that's why they've adopted these environmental practices. So it's not detracting from their core. I think it's a way of them making sure that they can stay true to their core over time. But I think that your question raises a good point that I see a lot of companies try to give back in ways that are not consistent with their business. My favorite example, there's a hamburger chain out in the West Coast called Carl's Jr. They're known for having really huge, big burgers, and for a while they were running these really sexist ads with like Paris Hilton, like eating this burger in this very like sensuous way, and they're appealing to guys like you, which is totally fine. But then they. Hey, that's okay. Yeah, call me what I am. But no, and then they did this whole breast cancer awareness month campaign, and I'm like, you're trying to appeal to young men, and not saying that young men shouldn't care about breast cancer. You should, because it will affect a woman that you know. But it's like, let's do something that's a little bit more aligned with your core operations, your core target, your core values. Let's not just do breast cancer month awareness because it's a hip thing to do. So you do really need to stay focused and make sure that every expression, including your efforts to make a positive impact, are aligned with that core.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, so yes, probably one more question. So yes.
My son works for Burt's Bees.
Ah, yes.
And so they fit right into this. I don't know if you work with them.
I haven't, but I use their lip balm. Yeah.
I think from the history that I do know, and I'm sure I don't know a lot about it, that's been their core since the beginning up in the forest.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But then I'm conflicted because they're owned by the evil empire of Clorox. And
Yeah.
whether it's true or not, my perception of that is built on this.
Mm-hmm.
I know that. I don't know if anybody else in the room knows it.
Yeah.
I always do because I talk about it in my office. So how do they manage the brand?
Right, yeah. Well, and that's actually, I think, what they're trying to do. At least Kashi, the cereal, the kind of organic or natural cereal company, was bought by Kellogg, and same kind of situation where it's like, how can you be run by this huge packaged goods company and still remain true to your values? The truth is that actually the Kellogg's and the Cloroxes of the world are trying to learn how to be more purposeful, how to make a more emotional connection with their customers, how to be more sustainable, and again, I mean like sustainable business over time. And so I think that it's the onus is on the Burt's Bees folks, and the Kashis of the world to always be evangelizing what they're doing, even in this corporate setting. I mean, that's why they were bought in the first place. So they need to fulfill that purpose as much as the purpose of their brand. It's hard because you're dealing with a company that is hundreds years old that's been stuck in their ways. But I think because they've purchased a company like that, they're making a statement that they know they need to change. Yeah. I apologize that I have to run to go to the airport, but I would be happy to answer any of the questions that you have. You can always reach me at Denise Yohn. And in fact, the folks who I owe books to, if you just go to the site, or if you do mail@deniseyohn.com, that's my email address, one way or another, give me your address information and I'll send you the copies of the books. That's true. Well, I'll tell you what's to stop you is I buy every single book that I give away from Amazon. Okay, so think about that like you guys can make me really poor, okay? So please don't do that. But I'd be happy to answer any questions or hear any other feedback that you have. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.